Hi everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura and I'm the Carpe Diem Stitcher, so called because I've got so much to sew but so little time to do it in. So in today's video I thought that I would do something that I said I would do if people were interested before, and a few of you said you were, and that's to show you my collection of sewing books. So some of them are pattern books and some of them are more like how to do books. I'm excluding from this my sew over ebooks. If you've watched me for a while, you know that I've got 3 of the sew over ebooks, and I'll link to the webpage below where you can have a look at those. But because they're not actual hard copy books, I'm going to miss them out of this video. But they're fundamentally pattern books, as you'll probably know if you've seen any of them or seen my review of the Alex shirt pattern, which I'll link below as well. So I'm sticking to hard copy books. So the first 4 books I'm going to show you are the kind of how to do type books. And the reason I was inspired to do this video now partly is because obviously we're getting up to, is it too early to mention the Christmas word? But if you are somebody who is on the lookout for new books or suggestions that you might want to make to friends or relatives who want to buy you something sewing related but you don't know what they're going to give you and you want something that you actually would like, then you might want to suggest 1 or 2 of these books. And also if you know other sewers or people who want to get into sewing and you're interested to find out a little bit more about some books that are out there, then that also might be useful for you. Excuse me, my voice is a bit croaky today. I had my COVID booster jab yesterday, and I don't know whether that's something to do with it, but I'm sort of coughing a bit and spluttering a bit, so apologies if the sound on this isn't brilliant. So I thought I'd start off with the first 2 books I actually ever got. So this is the first one. So this is A Beginner's Guide to Machine Sewing by Clementine Collinet. And this is a mixture of kind of instructions and how to do things and some fairly simple projects. And it's got all sorts in here. If I just open it up and show you. So it's got things about how you get started. You may not be able to see this. I'll link to all these down below as well. But it's got instructions about, you know, how to set up your sewing machine, how to do your bobbins, sewing simple items. So it's got projects like flat cushions, making bunting, and some bits about sewing your own clothes. So simple things about making your own clothes, like sewing darts and sewing facings, making bias binding. It's got a strappy top project and a wrap over skirt project, and then things like sewing accessories, so rick rack braid, flat hems, how to make a curtain, how to put a zip in, bits about quilting, bits about patchworking, and how to make a bag. So it's got a real mix of projects. So I have to say I haven't really used this a whole lot because I bought it thinking, oh, this will get me started, this will get me started. And then in actual fact, I kind of skipped this stage a bit. But I wouldn't write it off altogether. What I'd say is, if you've got somebody a bit younger who is interested in sewing, who maybe doesn't want to sew or start with sewing clothes or always make clothes, this might not be a bad book. Or if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily want to sew clothes and you're interested in doing smaller projects, at least at first, and you don't want a really complex book, then this might be for you. So I'd say it's a kind of starter book, really. So that's the first one. And at the same time as I bought that one, I went slightly from sort of mini to maxi. So I bought this at the same time. So this is the sewing book, and it's almost like a kind of encyclopedia of sewing, and it's by Alison Smith, who you might have heard of before or seen some of her other things. I think she's also done one called something like The Dressmaker's Guide, which I haven't got and I haven't worried about looking at because most of this relates to dressmaking. There are things again like cushions, but it's really useful for looking up techniques. So if you're doing a pattern and you're a bit confused about something and you're not sure how to do a particular technique, or you're not sure about different types of fabrics or what you might need, or whether a particular tool will be useful or not. Let me show you the tools section. Oops, this is really heavy. You see it talks about basic tools and equipment, so you can see there's things like seam gauges and buttons and pin cushions and seam ripper, every sewist friend, the seam ripper. And then it talks about things that are kind of nice to have. Goes through cutting tools, different types of cutting tool. So again, if you're just starting and you want to know what's worthwhile and what isn't, this isn't a bad book to have, although of course there are loads of videos on YouTube about it as well. Different measuring tools, pros and cons of the different measuring tools. Can you see that? There you go. And then the kind of nice to have. So you see they've got mannequin. So Olivia will be pleased to see that one of her cousins is in there, and an awl, and what else have they got on there? Pliers to put in eyelets and things, pattern paper, point turner. So yeah, lots of different things. And then as you progress through, so it takes you through different types of thread, but of course you won't be surprised to know that Mariflex isn't in here, because it's that's too recent an invention for that. It talks you through different types of fabric, what the characteristics of different fabrics are. So it's a really good encyclopedia if you're not very familiar with fabric, and particularly in these days when we buy a lot online, it's quite helpful to have this to consult. And then it talks about, what else does it talk about? It talks about how to measure yourself, and then it starts talking about how you might alter patterns. So fitting guides. So takes you through all that. So you can use it as a kind of ready reference guide. Takes you through how you might make and amend a toile to fit you. I feel like that. Is it the Chad character that appears over walls like this? So takes you through that. What else have we got? We've got different types of seam, different types of hand stitching. So really any term that you come across in a pattern and you're not sure what it means, you can always look it up. And then different kinds of technique. It has got some patterns in here, so it's got a bag and it's got a dressing gown, which is unisex, which is actually quite nice, quite a nice dressing gown. It's got and then it's got particular sewing techniques, like for example how to make a pocket. It's got different types of pockets, different types of collar, and you can see there's lots and lots and lots of pictures. So if you're quite a visual learner and you want to follow the different steps, you can do that, and I think that it's quite useful for that, and I've certainly used it sometimes when I've been confused about things. I've just found, I think, the dressing gown pattern. Yeah, there's a picture of the dressing gown. So I think that's quite nice, actually. That's quite pretty. And the colour blocking as well. So it's got that. It's got a nice wrap skirt, which I keep saying I'll make. And then it's like everything else. You kind of forget about it. And I think that's why I had as my sewing goal, try to make more things from books. Attaching patch pockets. I'm just looking to see what else we have. Different types of hemming. So you've got the hems with banding, decorative faced hem, how to hem stretch knits. So really, if you have an issue or you're just not sure how to do something and you want a step-by-step guide, it's really useful for that, and I've definitely used it for that. How to put in zippers. So again, I think it's one of those things where you can find lots of videos on YouTube, but then you've got to stop and watch the video. And it really depends. I think it's a case of, do you like books or do you like videos? Do you want to watch something actually happening in action, or do you want to just look at step-by-step pictures? But in terms of would I recommend the book? Yes, I would. I think it is worth it. It's obviously quite a big book. But it's got quilting in it as well, quilting and applique. So that's what I mean, that it's quite a generalised book. And I haven't looked at the dressmaking one, but I would imagine there's less of this kind of thing in the dressmaker's guide. But yeah, really quite big and quite comprehensive. It's even got blinds in it. And how to do mending as well, which is also quite useful in these days of upcycling and being frugal. So yeah, so I would say that's a really good book, and I would probably buy it again if I was starting out now. I think it's really quite a useful reference book, particularly if you want to do more tailoring, more fitted garments. I think it's probably worth having. And then these two books are a bit different. So they're still how-to books, and they are still, they're still definitely more on the how-to side than the patterns, but they are a little bit different. And they're by the same author, and that's a lady called Barbara Emodi, who I first heard of on the Clothes Making Mavens podcast. She was on there from time to time. And these are much more on the kind of hints and tips variety, rather than the I'm going to take you through something from start to finish, though she does walk you through the steps of the hints and tips. So she's got two books, and this is the first one that came out. So this is called Sew, the Garment Making Book of Knowledge, and it says at the bottom, real life lessons from a serial sewist. And so this is kind of things that she's picked up along the way that she thinks are useful. And there are some chapters that kind of deal with they all deal with specific topics, but they're things that, kind of, I wish somebody had told me this when I first started kinds of topics. So it's things like, do you really need an overlocker? Why would you want to sew in the first place? How do you decide what to sew? How do you know when your pattern needs altering? And so it tells you things to look for. So for example, when you measure your hips, and it talks about, well, actually you take your widest, lowest body measurement, and it's not necessarily on your hips. So it says, don't worry about looking for a hip measurement, wrap a measuring tape around your waist and let it out as you slide it down your body. And when you tighten it up again, you've just passed your widest point. So all useful things like that. Different measurements, why you would take them, how to take your upper arm bicep measurement. And also some fairly basic things around how to alter a flat pattern, including, for example, how to fit different types of trousers, or pants as she calls it, because she's in the United States. So she talks about how you can add for a fuller abdomen in pants, and changing the front crotch seam to add length or to add width, depending on what you need to do. So lots of different bits. Again, a book to kind of dip into. And things like, what do you do if you have problems where your threads tangle, initial thread tangles, and remember to hold the two threads at the back when you're sewing to stop that happening. So lots of troubleshooting. So just really hints and tips. And also not to be afraid if you see a sewing pattern and it's, say, got a seam in, and you think, well, hang on, why has it got a seam in there? I wouldn't have put a seam in there. Just to be brave and maybe say, well, actually, you don't need that seam. And she says she's done that a lot. So the idea that a pattern is just a pattern, and there's lots of different ways to do the same thing or achieve the same result. So just this kind of freedom to experiment, really. So I think that's really useful, and I'll come back and chat a bit more about the two as a pair in a minute when I've shown you this one. And the second one is called Stress-Free Sewing, a no-fail guide to garments for the modern sewist. So she uses fail with a specific meaning. She uses it as a mnemonic for, it stands for followed all instructions, let down. So when you've done everything the pattern tells you to do and the garment just doesn't look right, just looks wonky or not very neat. So she talks you through, for example, things like putting a neckline into a stretch knit. And she talks you through how, in fact, you know, there might be a pattern piece and it might be, you know, 85% of the length of the neckband on your top. But depending how stretchy your fabric is or isn't, that may or may not work for you. And so she talks you through how you can do it to suit your pattern and your fabric each time, rather than just saying, oh, well, it has to be this because that's what the pattern says. And she talks you through things like making collars in coats. I'm just looking. Here we go. So there's a section on collars and lapels, and she talks about different strategies to stop getting bulk. So in each case, she shows a problem. So for example, if you look at this one on jackets and coating, and you've got, I don't know if you can see very well, but you've got this kind of lumpiness around the collar. And she said, does this look familiar? So what she's saying is it follows the pattern, but you get this kind of lumpiness because fabrics like the wools, it says, used in suits, jackets and coats are just too thick for these conventional construction techniques. And you're sewing through multiple layers and you're just not going to get the precision. So then she talks about, well, you know, you can unpick it and try using one of the other methods, or at least here are some ways that you can try to avoid that the next time. So again, it's this idea of deviating from what the pattern says if it's not working out for you. And so this is split into different areas where people traditionally have problems. So I'm just finding the index. So you've got neckbands and bindings. So that's the thing about, I was telling you about knit neckbands. Facings and when facings don't work and how to get rid of them. You've got the chapter I was just showing you about collars and lapels. Then you've got plackets and tabs and yokes, V necklines in knits. You've got one on pockets, one on zippers, sleeves and cuffs, buttons and buttonholes, and hems. And then a kind of 50 ways to enjoy your sewing, because she says sewing is meant to be fun, it's meant to be joyful. So if you're stressing about it all the time, you're not really getting what you came for. And as I say, apart from the fact that, you know, we're getting near Christmas, so these might make good gifts either for you or for someone else. The other reason I thought I'd mention them, and particularly the Barbary Modi books, is if you watched Jess, who is So What If I Sews, I think it was her last video or the one before, she mentioned very briefly that she and I are planning to do a collaboration, and we're going to be releasing videos talking about what we're going to do fairly soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that on my channel and also on Jess's channel, and I'll link her channel down below. But I've been sitting this week thinking about what I'm going to do and reading through pattern instructions to make sure that if I start something, I can actually finish it and I can do it. And some of the pattern instructions, and when I show you what I'm going to make, you're probably not going to be surprised by this. That's if I stick with this decision, but I think I probably will. And some of the instructions aren't terribly clear. So I went to the Barbary Modi books and just found the answers to the things that I was struggling to understand straight away. And I just thought that's so useful just to have a reference book that you can just go to and then think, oh, okay, well, when I get to that step, I'll just follow those instructions instead. So that's also what prompted me to make the video. So that's all the how-to type books. So I'm going to pause now and pick up the other ones, which are primarily the pattern books, and I'll see you in a sec. So welcome back. So I've swapped over and I've now got the pattern books, and I've put the how-to books away, apart from Barbara and Modi, because I kind of think I might need her around for a bit. If you're wondering what I'm wearing Me-Made, a Me-Made top, which is the Forget Me Not Patterns Iris tee with the long sleeves, which I actually made for Jess. So What If I Sew Yellow for Endo Challenge, not this year but last year, 2021. And I reviewed the pattern as part of my jersey tops review, which I'll link to down below, and I'll pop a picture of the full top up here so you can see it. But it's quite cold in here today. I've got the heating on now, but I haven't had over the week while I've not been using the room, so it's not that warm in here. So anyway, on with the books. So these are not grouped in any order of preference of book, but they're grouped so that I've put the ones you may be less familiar with earlier on, so that you can see things that are new to you. And then I've got a couple of what you might call old favourites at the end. So I'll mention those and I'll talk to you about what I've done from them, but I won't spend too long on them. So the first book is called So Many Dresses, So Little Time. And I think I probably mentioned this to you briefly right at the beginning of my vlogging, maybe in my sewing goals video. But essentially it gives you lots of different bodice and skirt and sleeve patterns and shows you how to change collars so that you can combine all the pieces in lots and lots of different ways. So it reminds me of those children's books where you have, I have a memory I had one that was something like The Three Little Pigs, and they had different hats and different sweaters and different trousers. So depending which page you opened the book at, the page was split, so you could have them open at different pages. So you could have the first page for the hat and the last page for the trousers, and they could have lots and lots of different outfits. And this is kind of like the human pattern version of that. So in theory, this tells you all you need to know about making dresses. So there's a kind of sewing essentials bit at the front, talking about different types of fabric, different sewing techniques, etc, etc, differences between facings and linings, putting zippers in, all that stuff. I suspect in reality you're going to be somebody who's sewn a little bit by the time you get this book. So to give you an example of how it works, I'll just show you that one simply because that's the most basic bodice. So here I am coming to you from the future, because when I came to edit this video, I discovered that my camera had actually stopped filming on my phone before I thought it had, because it ran out of storage space. So I thought that I'd actually managed to capture more of the video than I actually had. So I'm just refilming the bit about So Many Dresses, So Little Time. So the last bit of footage I've got is me showing you the basic bodice shown with the, what is it? The straight skirt. So that's that. And then what I've done is I've gone through, and you can see, just to give you an example, there's lots of different bodices in the book. But what I've done is I've picked out other patterns that show examples of it with different necklines. So that's actually exactly the same skirt and exactly the same bodice, but just with a scoop neck put on top instead of the higher neck from the original bodice. And then if I move through a bit further, you can see that that's the same bodice again, but this time the neckline's been altered so that it's a boat neck, which I really like. I like boat necks anyway. And then you can do it with a much longer skirt, and hey presto, you've got something you could wear to a wedding. So that's with a boat neck. And then the next example I've got for you is basic bodice, but this time with a Peter Pan collar on it. So that's that. So it's all the same basic bodice, and just with different elements of the bits that make up the dress attached to it. Sorry, I'm just struggling to find where my... Yeah. So this is when you start getting into the different types of sleeve. So it's got a cap sleeve. This one's the short sleeve. And again, you can see that's the same basic bodice, and this time you've got a sleeve attached to it. And there are instructions. If I just, hopefully, there are instructions. It says basically use the same instructions as you get with the cap sleeve on the basic bodice. So if I go back, there's the cap sleeve with the basic bodice. And then there are instructions as to how to add sleeves into the bodice. So there's clear instructions, and it talks about the fact that there's already notches marked on the bodice pattern for inserting sleeves. So you can put sleeves onto it. So you've got cap sleeves, you've got short sleeve, you've got a long sleeve, you've got a bell sleeve. There you go. That's the bell sleeve. And then the final example I've got to show you is, you've already seen some of these, obviously, as we've gone through, but with a different skirt on it. So there's the basic bodice again, just as you saw it in the very first picture, but this time it's got a pleated skirt on it. So you can see that if you do that with all the different bodices in the book, and you put different sleeves on it, and you put a different skirt on it, or you change the neckline, or you add a collar, you've got loads and loads and loads of different looks. So it's really versatile, and I really need to try it. So that's all from future Laura, back to past Laura. So this one is Boundless Style. So it's the same principle as the So Many Dresses, So Little Time. And this one's by Christiane Booth at Victory Patterns. So again, exactly the same principle, not as many different variations. But again, you'll see, if I try and show you, I don't know if that's going to show, but it's got, again, it's got introductory sections, getting started, tools, skills and techniques, and then it's got various different bodices. So I'll just whiz through the techniques and things. So you can see there's quite a lot of repetition. But again, if you're a visual learner and you think that actually one book doesn't explain it all that well, and I used to say this when I used to teach law students, that sometimes you might read one book and you think, I don't understand a word they're talking about. You read another book and it's perfectly clear. So always worth, I think, looking at different reference books or watching different videos if that's how you learn, if your brain works that way. So if I show you there, I can show you they've got lots of different bodices that you can choose from. And so again, you can and you can create different versions. So that's the Katrina, which is princess themed, and you can do it all in one colour, or you can colour block it, and you can put piping in it or not, as the case may be. Let me flick through and find the skirts. It tells you how to put sleeves in it if you want it with sleeves, which for me is always good. Now you've got the billy, so again you can do it in different colour blocking, and it looks completely different, which is great, because if you look on the front, I think that's also the billy, because that matches that one. So you can get totally different looks with it, which is great. There you've got the Grace, which is kind of a bit more simple, understated, and the Farah with these great big kind of swoopy sleeves. Oh, that might have been something else actually, the one on the front. I think it's the sleeves, it's got the Munro sleeves on it. And then it shows you different skirts. So there's a dirndl skirt again, a bit like we saw in the other book, and you can do it at lots of different lengths. So again, you can see the principle, you can mix and match, and it's got quite comprehensive instructions as to how to do that. Usefully, it tells you when to finish seams, which is great because not all patterns do. Gives you a pattern inventory for each one as you go through. So again, I need to try it. I haven't as yet, but I really do need to do it. I think when I've looked at it before, I've sometimes thought some of the styles aren't for me, but I think that might be because I just need to read into it a little bit more, because I tend to like things with sleeves a bit more. But it does look like you can do that, and I could probably take the sleeves out of the other one and amend the sleeve heads and put them on here. So endless possibilities. Shows you how to line the different skirts as well. So that's the 2 mix and match books that I've got. And then the final 2 books, which I said I won't spend too long on, are the old favourites. Tilly, Love at First Stitch, which is her first book, which is, as some of you will probably know, a really basic first time dressmaking book. And I think because I got this fairly quickly after I got that project book that I showed you right at the beginning, that's probably why I didn't make many of the projects. So I actually jumped in and I've made a few out of here, not all of them. So it's got, for those of you who haven't seen it before, it's got various different patterns, and within each pattern you learn different techniques. So you can work your way through the book, and each of the patterns gets very slightly harder. So you start off with the Brigitte scarf or Brigitte scarf, depending if you're being French or German. Talks about setting up your sewing machine and how to make a sort of fairly flat scarf and doing top stitching. And then you've got the Margot pyjamas, which are just pyjama bottoms, and I've made those, and I would make them again. They're just simple cotton pyjamas with a drawstring, and they're really quite useful, quite nice for the summer. The Delphine skirt I made, so if I show you, I think somewhere, yes it has, it's got pictures of the various ones so I don't have to flick through. So there's the Brigitte scarf, and there's the Margot pyjamas with the drawstring, and you can shorten them and make them cropped. Oh, where are we? There. And that's the, where am I going? I've got lost. There's the Margot's full length. And then I've made the Delphine, which is that one, which I made out of a remnant from a fabric shop in kind of purple. I'll put a picture up here. I've never actually really worn it. I don't know if I'd still fit in it. I quite like it, but I didn't actually make it necessarily to wear it. I made it to kind of practice techniques, so it was very much a wearable toile, if at all. So I've made the Delphine, and I've also made the Megan, and again I made that in a remnant that I got, which might have been kind of upholstery fabric, but it's okay. The only problem is it doesn't fit me anymore, which is a real shame because I actually do quite like it. So I'll pop a picture in of that for you as well so you can see it. And then you've got another skirt called the Clément skirt, which is that one. Slightly fuller skirt, and you've got the Mimi blouse. So by this time you're getting into more complicated techniques. And the last one is the Lilou dress. And you can see they've got it in lots of different variations, so you can change it up. So I haven't made the last 3 patterns, mainly because I'm not sure they're really me, although I have stolen the Clément's pocket and I put it in my Sew Over It Alex shirt dress. That was the pattern piece from there. So I think they're probably fine as patterns go. It's just that they're not really my style, and so I've probably gone on and learnt those techniques from other books. But again, if you are looking for a book that is reasonably basic, got some reasonably fun makes, and makes you feel like you're actually making something quite good and quite wearable fairly early on in your sewing career. When I first made the what's the dress called again? I've forgotten. Honestly, I'm memory like a sieve at the minute. The Megan dress. When I first made that, I really, really, really liked the fit of it on me, and I was really pleased. And it was only about the third thing I'd made, so I thought, well, actually, that's really not bad. And then last, but by no means least, same principle again, the other Tilly book that I've got. So this is the Tilly and the Buttons Stretch book. So again, same principle, patterns get harder as you go through and you learn a bit more each time in terms of techniques. So in that picture on the front, Tilly is wearing the Joni dress, which I think is the last pattern in the book. And again, I've made some of these, but not others. But I found it really useful when I was learning to sew stretch. So there's whole sections again about how to sew with knits, which are really useful if you've not done that before. And I did find it useful when I first started. And you've got a skirt called the BB skirt, which you can also make into a kind of dungaree type skirt. So I haven't made that, but I have made the Frankie baseball tee. And again, as I said, I'd link my jersey t-shirts patterns video down below. So you'll see that I've made that a couple of times and I really like that. And I would make it again. The Freya sweater and dress, which again I also like. I've made the top, I haven't made the dress. The dress is quite A-line. And I think what I might do is do what the French Seams has done. Rachel at the French Seams, and she's hacked the billy and put the Freya cowl neck on it. So I think I might try that. And then you've got the Stella hoodie and joggers, which is that one. And again, I might try that, particularly the hoodie. I don't know whether I'll do the joggers. I've got the jogger patterns, but I might well give the hoodie a go. And then you've got the Joni dress, which is that twist top, which I like, but I don't think it's really me, and that's really just why I haven't made it. I'm not that keen on the neckline for me. So again, I've whistled through that one a bit, but I think a lot of you have heard of that one anyway, so I think probably it made more sense to spend more time on the ones that you may not have seen before. So that's all my sewing books. I really hope you enjoyed that. There is another Tilly book, of course. There's Tilly and the Buttons Make It Simple, which is patterns that you're supposed to be able to sew fairly quickly, and I don't own that, and having had a look through it, I'm probably not going to get it. I quite like the pinafore dress on it, and I've seen some nice versions of that, but I think that's probably the only one that I would look at and go, oh yeah, I'd make that. And I don't think it's worth it for just one pattern, but I would recommend the Tilly books to somebody who's starting out and likes Tilly's style. And it's the same really with her patterns since. Some of them I really like and others of them are not for me, which is the same really with most pattern companies, I think. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I will see you all very soon. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Hope you're all well and you've had time for some sewing this weekend. Bye for now.